Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 91 with Caleb Parker. I had a great chat with Caleb. Caleb is actually involved with some of my favorite artists, including Vulfpeck, Pomplamoose, and Scary Pockets, and he does a lot of live recordings and mixing. And we got really geeky and talked about all those things, you know, how he live tracks a band, how he mixes them, you know, his approach to stuff like snare drums and bass. We got geeky, and we also talked about his journey, starting with playing classical acoustic guitar and transitioning into being the audio man for Scary Pockets and stuff like that. So we really got deep, and I think you're going to love this episode. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Caleb Parker here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Caleb Parker. Caleb is an audio engineer and music producer based out of Long Beach, California. He's worked with bands such as Scary Pockets, Pomplamoose, Vulfpeck, The Fearless Flyers, Couch, and Reliably Bad. I first came upon Caleb from his work with Scary Pockets and Pomplamoose and decided to reach out, and Caleb's been super gracious and joined us on the show. So without further ado, welcome to Secret Sonics, Caleb.
Hey, thank you. What's up, Ben?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell the audience a little bit about your story. I'm sure a lot of the audience has actually probably heard some of the work you've done, but tell the audience a tiny bit about, you know, how music began for you and kind of how that led into audio.
Yeah, totally. So I started playing music when I was like pretty young. It's a classic story of like I wanted to play guitar, but my mom made me take piano lessons, which was probably like a good thing for me.
Yeah.
But I
represent.
Yeah. Totally. There's let's get a hand up for everybody that's the thing. So I started taking guitar pretty seriously in junior high and high school. Grew up in church and stuff, so I was playing in church bands and playing at school and pretending that I could play some jazz and all that sort of stuff. And then when it came time to go to college, like it just seemed like a no-brainer that I should go to school for music. So I studied guitar in college. I was at Biola University, and as part of the program that I was in, I had to play classical guitar for a couple of semesters. And I hadn't done that before. And I kind of caught the bug. And so for the last 2 years of school, that's kind of what I was doing, like primarily is playing like classical guitar. Obviously, like I was in other bands and playing other genres and stuff like that too. Mm-hmm. But it was a really like eye-opening thing for me because the attention to detail and nuance. Well, the thing about classical that's a little different from other genres is that there's like 1,000 people that can play the piece, that can play all the notes and stuff. And so when you hit a certain level, you're not just trying to learn songs anymore. You're trying to like make stuff feel right. And you're like really paying attention to like the nuances and detail of like fret noise and the articulation of each notes and making sure that like the melody and the harmony balance is nice. And
wow, cool.
you know, like, and you're doing that with one hand, like, well, two hands, but you know, you're really just attacking the notes with one hand. And then like another big part is traditionally for like concerts and stuff, you're playing in a pretty big hall with a really quiet instrument that's unamplified. And so like just getting the volume out of the instrument is a total thing in itself. Wow. Yeah.
So you really have to dig in.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Hard. Yeah. It takes that was a trip. Like I was a decent player, and then like I was needing to do like my senior recital and stuff. And it's like, oh shoot, I gotta bump up the volume on this sucker and hope the audience is quiet. So it's a funny deal.
Wow. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
My bass teacher in high school was an upright player, and he really taught me to dig in, which is something that I kind of have spent a lot of time undoing, you know, because I'm an electric bass player primarily.
Right.
And because you don't need to do that with an electric instrument, and you actually get a better kind of transient if you don't.
Totally.
Often. So it's interesting that you're saying that, because it's
it's a different
you know,
thing.
acoustic musicians.
Yeah. Totally. And they both have a ton of value. And I was playing electric guitar too, like at the same time. It's not like I took a break from other stuff. But I mean, when I got out of college, I just really quickly realized that I didn't want to like do academics for a career. And I also didn't want to just play weddings. And, you know, because like that's kind of at least for classical guitarists in America, those were kind of the two career paths that I could see, because I don't think I had the chops to be like sort of like top tier. But you know, right. Like at the same time, like I was talking about music stuff here, but at the same time, I kind of had this parallel thing going on with recording. So I think like a lot of people in high school, like I had some bands and I was writing some songs and I wanted to record. And so a buddy of mine got a little recording rig together and we like borrowed microphones and stands and all that stuff. And like I remember setting up in my parents' living room, recording some stuff. And I didn't know what was going on at all. My buddy was engineering. But I had a whole bunch of experiences like that. And eventually I started getting my own little rig together. And in college, I had a band where I was the only one who knew anything about recording at all. So like they let me, like, we got to record. So like, Caleb, why don't you do it and make it happen? And so I did that. That's not a very good recording at all, but you know, I learned a lot. And then after school, like I started chasing down friends. You know, when you're in music school, you're around people that are making music. And I started chasing down friends and saying, hey, like, your stuff is cool. Like I know how to record. Like let's make some stuff. And eventually I landed this really bizarre job. So it was for this company that made home church curriculums, right? So like there's these big churches that would go and hire this company to help basically facilitate group discussions for these home church things. And at one point they decided that they wanted to try to record like these church bands. So like worship music and use it kind of like as bumper music for before and after. And my friend was that I met in school was the like the technical head over there for a while. And I was the one guy that she knew how to like work on music. So she hired me to like mix this sort of like bumper music. And the crazy thing is a lot of it, like there was some of it that was good, but a lot of it like was not good at all. And it was recorded like very live and in the room and with drummers that were just like bashing. And, you know, there was so much cymbal in the vocal mic. And then like I was having to make decisions about like, well, do I like tune this horribly out of tune vocal or do I just deal with the phase problems? You know, because if you're tuning a vocal that has a ton of cymbal bleed in it, you're going to have some level of phase problems with the drums, but is it worth it to have an in-tune vocal or an out-of-phase cymbal? And like, you know, having to make silly decisions like that. So
it's like trial by fire. You know?
1,000%. Yeah. And like, it was really good. I was having to learn all this sort of like recording, like when it's not done right, or when it's just, you know, when people are just throwing microphones up, like how do you sort of deal with this and make the best possible thing ever? Yeah, so I mean that wasn't the only thing I was doing, but I probably mixed like 80 or 90 songs like with this thing. So I got like you know, like over the course of a couple years.
That's a lot of experience.
Yeah, right? Like it was a bunch. And so like I was doing other like recording that didn't make my head explode all the time. You know, it was a lot more fun. And I had this one friend that I still work with him a lot, and he asked me like, "Hey, do you know this band Scary Pockets?" And I was like, no, I don't know. And he like showed me some of their videos and stuff. And, you know, like we were both like pretty young and he was trying to figure out stuff to do. And I was trying to figure out stuff to do. And at one point he cold called Ryan Lerman, was like, hey, like if you're like, this is really cool what you guys are doing. If you ever need any help with stuff, let me know. I'd be happy to help in whatever way possible. And Justin, he ended up doing a lot of their like social media and stuff early on. And the first Scary Pocket videos were all recorded by like Jack and Ryan, and they were recorded and mixed by them. And at one point, probably like 6 or 8 months into the process, they decided they wanted to, you know, like not have like an engineer, but just have somebody else babysit the record rig so they wouldn't have to think
so
about
they could focus on the music.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so Ryan asked Justin to do it, and Justin was like, I'm not an engineer, but you should ask my friend Caleb to do it because he knows what he's doing. And Justin, I remember this really well. Justin called me in the morning and said, hey, I think you're going to be getting a phone call from a guy named Ryan today. And there's a session that like he's probably going to ask you about engineering for today. Whatever you're doing today, don't do that and go do this session. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. And so sure enough, like a few minutes later, Ryan called me and was like, hey, can you be up to Highland Park? I was like, yeah, give me like 40 minutes. I'll be there. And so I just changed what I was doing and went and do that. I called my wife and was like, hey, like, I don't know when I'm going to be home today. So, I got a gig. So yeah, it was kind of, that's kind of how I ended up doing that. And, the reason I brought up that other gig doing the church music is because, I quickly learned like when you have drummers that play to the room and you have musicians that are like really, really bringing it, the live stuff, you still have to deal with some of those things. But I was like, oh yeah, I can definitely mix this. Like when the time came, because I had all that experience of trying to, dealing with really horribly recorded stuff. So
yeah. I totally resonate with that. Not to the same extent, but I used to do like these like living room recording, like live recording sessions. And I would have like drummers in a living room, getting into like the guitar mics, and it was like atrocious. And I kind of gave up because it was so tough. Mm-hmm. But you definitely learn a lot about, I don't know, just EQing, how to like deal with bleed and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'm not even like I'm not an anti-bleed engineer at all. Like even sometimes when I'm doing like, I'm working in a proper studio and stuff, I'm not trying to like totally isolate everything. But like, there's sort of a level of control that you can get like once you start using like the right microphones and things like that. And also, I mean, the most important thing with anything that's recorded live is that the playing is great. And when I say great, like part of that means like appropriate as well. Like with what you were talking about with the drummer bashing, like he probably didn't know, or the drummer getting into even if he wasn't bashing, like the drummer getting into the guitar mics and all that stuff, like there's sort of an appropriateness that it's like, okay, in this circumstance, in this particular room, like you probably shouldn't play that loud, or maybe you should stay away from the cymbals a little bit, or, like.
It's like kind of like those Tiny Desk concerts, like even if the song would have like real drums or playing with brushes, they're kind of adapting to the setting.
Totally. Yeah, I listened to this interview like a few years ago. You know that guy Matt Rossbang in Nashville?
No.
He does like the Jason Isbell. He did like the couple of the Jason Isbell records, and he did the first and I think maybe second Margo Price record as well. But he was talking about how like he recorded exclusively like live in the room to tape machines and stuff. But one of the tricks that I kind of picked up from him, but Scary Pockets was already doing, I was just like okay with it because I'd heard him talk about it, is that when you record like without headphones, musicians play to the room a lot better. Like, if you have amps, you're doing all of your monitoring through your instruments. That it can kind of create cool senses of depth and stuff because, if the musicians are all mixing themselves, like even if there's a lot of bleed, it's going to be kind of mixed bleed into the microphones.
Right. Yeah. Cause you have a better, it's like, it's feel really,
right.
Dynamics is feel, right? Like I could feel that I'm too loud now, let me just dig in a little less or turn my tone knob down, whatever it is,
Totally.
Wait, I want to go. I want to dig deeper into this, but first I want to dig a little bit deeper into your kind of story because I feel like we missed something. So you're one side of you in college is like studying classical guitar, and the other side is doing like this audio stuff, mixing for this church.
Yeah.
When does like audio become the main thing, and like how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was going to be like a session guitar player because like I was doing classical, but I had like acoustic guitar chops. I don't have as much anymore, but I used to really have them. And I thought I was going to be trying to do that, like, you know, find artists to go out with and stuff like that. And I was in LA, and that's a great spot to do that from. But I think what happened is it was kind